Alright, welcome to part 3 of my DIY pond build. This is the final part in the series, but I will be making update videos in the future of whatever I might do to it, as far as like adding fish or plants maybe. These are the goldfish I got. These are just feeder goldfish, about 30 cents a piece. I got 10 of them. This is the first time I'll be adding fish to it, so I'm going to put them in there and let them acclimate for a little bit to get used to the temperature. And then I'll be letting them out of the bag there in a little bit. But before I show you the whole pond here, I'm going to take you back in time to show you the time lapse and a few of the interjections during those time lapses that I kind of talk about a few things as I'm building this. At the end of this video, I'm going to be discussing the cost of materials and the time it took me and probably a few other things. Any of the products that I used for this project will be listed in the video description. They will be affiliate links, so I do get a small commission if you click on those links, but it doesn't cost you anything extra. So we'll go ahead and revert back in time here and show you kind of how this whole process went. Alright, so I got my pump in here temporarily, turning it on for the first time. I can see the intake bay is working. There's water flowing in there and the leaves are kind of moving towards that direction. That's what we want. But I just got laying the pipe is up in the ground. You can see the bog is filling up now. I'm just doing this to check the waterfall and to see how full that bog gets and to make sure there's no overspill on the sides here. So this will be the first time I get to see this flowing. You can see here it's still kind of filling up. There's a little bit of a leak over there, you can see that, but that's not a big deal. Alright, so we got some water flowing around this side, but it is flowing this way, so I'm gonna have to fix that and stop the water from flowing around that side there. So there it is. A lot of dust kicking up in here. That'll eventually work itself out. I kind of figured that was gonna happen anyway. I didn't really hose anything down. So I kind of figured this edge was gonna be a little bit low, so I'm actually gonna build that up a little bit. I'll probably have to foam in this area. I have to redo this whole section here, but other than that, this is looking pretty good. Yeah, I can even see it down here. Yeah, that's all flowing down that way. So, not a big deal, pretty simple fix. I think overall I'm pretty satisfied with that. Now I got my water level there, I know where I'm going to have to put the outlet on that hose there. Right where I'm pointing-ish, I'm going to have to put the T, which sprays water into the top of the bog with the valve just by a little bit. Call that a bleeder valve, so there doesn't, if the pump shuts off, it doesn't suck all the water out of the bog. It'll just have an air inlet and it'll break the siphon. I found a use for this powerful laser that I have. This is a blue laser. I think it's 5 watts actually, or 3 watts, something like that. Pretty powerful, and it will burn things. So this fabric here, I need to cut this. This is the overlayment. This is same as the underlayment, just another piece of it on top of the liner. And it's kind of hard to get a knife down inside here without cutting a liner. And I want to get it cut below here so that this fabric isn't exposed. So it's kind of hard to get scissors or a knife in there, so I decided to use this laser to actually cut it. And this is probably the only use I've ever found for this laser other than just toying around. So I just go like that, kind of go along there, and then it cuts it just fine. It's a little bit easier to do it when I'm not holding the camera, but I just tore that right there real easy because it basically just cut it. This fabric it tears sort of easily, but it pulls everything out that I've already had tucked in there, like the rocks and everything. So this is much more precise. Yeah. Well, it's coming along here, all downhill from this point. Got a lot done. You can see the bog is all done, the pond's all done. I got one last thing to do, and that's to bury this line here for the bog feed. the flexible PVC. And obviously cut off the excess and everything, but that's pretty easy to do, just cutting a slit in the ground and then putting the same dirt back on top of it. It's not really a big deal. And then pretty much be done after that. I'm gonna be, tidying up things. Like, I think I'm gonna rearrange some of these rocks on the bog side. And then that bucket, I'm still gonna cover up the top of that. Not a big deal. And I gotta do a little bit of landscaping kind of around this with some stones and plants and everything. But other than that, we're almost done. The pond is getting close to being done here as far as the hardscape goes. I did run the pump line underneath through that little channel that I made that I talked about in part 1, which runs over there to the outlet, and then there's a 12-volt cord which goes to the lights over there. You can see they're on right now. I don't have a photocell on those yet. That's going to be next, probably tomorrow I'm going to do that. But added the bigger boulder here. The pipe goes underground around there, comes up over there, and then I permanently put the pump in there now, so I have an elbow there and then a quick disconnect right there. There's like a rubber coupling, so I can just easily pull that pump out. That's going to be covered up with something. I'm not sure exactly what yet. It might be maybe like a moss mat or bark or something like that that'll just hide that. Something easy to remove. And over here I put some junipers there. Those are the first plants I got around here. There's going to be more. And then there is some black fabric there. That was the underlayment, part of the underlayment for the liner. I just put over top the bucket for now. I'm going to be probably doing the same thing, like bark or maybe a stone or something on top of that to hide that as well, but that'll be in sometime in the future. It's not important right now. And then up here, I'll walk over here. This is the outlet here. Whoop, gonna fall. So that's my anti-siphon valve right there. So a little bit, so the line comes up here and then goes down there. I'm pretty sure I showed that in part 1. And then it goes underneath, about 2 feet of gravel comes up and percolates up through there. But this is stealing a little bit of the water that comes out before that. And that's above water level. And so when that pump shuts off over there, if it ever shuts off, it's not going to suck all the debris out of the bottom of the bog and siphon it out. It's an air brake, so no check valves, so you don't have to worry about the check valve going bad or clogging or anything like that. On the back side of this over here, I still have to finish this. I'm going to add some dirt to bring up the slope and then put some gravel around there to finish that edge. And probably have some kind of ground cover plants around there as well. Maybe a couple of taller plants. You can see over here the water's cleared up pretty good. The center there, as I've said before, it's about 2.75 feet deep in the center, and then there's a cave underneath there with a 5-gallon bucket underneath that rock. Well, it's actually technically behind that rock. That's just the front edge of it there. So I'll have some lilies in there and all that, and probably I'm going to put some lighting here for the waterfall and lighting over there to shine this way down into the well there. But other than that, I got some more work to do. I'll probably come back and show more progress later on. Alright, so the pond and the landscaping around it is for the most part finished. You can see I added the gravel bed over there with some boxwoods. The junipers are still over there, and those are all the plants I have for now. But mainly got the gravel around there, and then around the back side there I added some stuff. I'll talk about that in just a second here. That's the squirrel feeder. I'm going to move that over. Over here I have, I got my PWM dimmer switch for the 12-volt lighting, and then that's inline, and then an inline photocell for night. And it doesn't work great. It's not meant to work with a dimmer, but since it is working off 12 volts, it does work. It just doesn't dim very precisely. It sort of works though. So I tied all that in. That's going to go in a box on here, but that's ready to go. So here's kind of what it looks like around here close up. I still got to get like a flat rock for my little junction point here, which is just that bucket where the wires go into, and then that channel goes underneath there. That's still going to get covered up with like a something. I haven't decided exactly what. It's a little bit foggy because I've been putting some dirty gravel up on the bog there. But here's kind of a closer look around here. So you can see the boxwoods all here. They're kind of like, they're not in a straight row. They're kind of like non-symmetrical, I guess if you want to call it that. And over here on the other side, what I did is I added this gravel here. I actually added that all the way around here up to about this wide, just for some fill. There's not going to be any kind of like heavy rooted plants growing here. This is all going to be ground cover around this side. So basically put some like manure compost stuff as a base layer, taper this out, because you can see here that there's, it might be hard to see in video, but there's a pretty significant taper here. I wanted all the boulders and gravel up top to kind of mend with the land so that they look below it, and it does look better that way. This is kind of going to probably be tapered out, leaving a little further with some dirt in the future. But as of right now, this is kind of what I did, and that's going to sit there for a while until I plant it. But that basically goes all the way around, and then up top here, I added some gravel around the edges here. There's the, this is the anti-siphon here, so if the pump shuts off, I think I've talked about this so many times already, but just for anyone else who skipped ahead in the video, when the pump shuts off, that allows air to go into it so that it doesn't suck the dirt out of the bottom of the bog. It just needs to be a little trickle just so air can go back in there. Otherwise, it'll suck all the dirt out of the bottom of the bog and go into the pond if the pump shuts off every single time. So I added some gravel up here, 57 gravel, just tapered up towards the boulders there, so marginal plants can grow there without being immersed in the water. And then there's still probably about 3 inches of water in the center there before it goes downstream. So that's kind of what it looks like around here. I added some gravel over here. I haven't cut any of the edging in yet. That's going to be the very last thing I do. I kind of got to see what's going to happen here. But I just kind of made like a little pathway over here. And just kind of added little crushed boulders up in here. And then you can see the waterfall there. Nice landscaping light. And that's pretty much it. So I'm probably going, I'm going to end this segment of video here, but I'm probably going to come back and talk about a few other things that maybe I forgot to mention. Alright, so I went ahead and added a temporary dish strainer in there in that bucket, and just put some foam around it. That's a polyfill for like pillows and stuff, I guess. Or you can use it for aquarium filters. Anyways, yeah, so that's there so the fish don't go down there. And the tadpoles, I got tadpoles too, so you can kind of see a few fish down there. There's I think rosy red minnows, I guess they're called, and then there's 9 of the goldfish down in there. Comet goldfish, which are just feeder goldfish. Well, they're all feeder fish, I guess, but in this case, I saved their lives. So, I have a shed in the back, and see that moss on that rock down there. I just put a bunch of that moss on there. I don't know what kind of moss it is offhand. And I spread some more mosses around here. And on the other side of the waterfall over there, and then kind of just all along there. And then you can see a bunch over there, which there's going to be, I think, a half a log or something covering that, so it'll be on the other side of that log. And I put some sticks over there. There's a stick sticking up there, and then there's a stick sticking up right here. So those kind of are sticking over there for like dragonflies to hang out. Yeah, so that's kind of what it looks like right now, but I do have plants on the way. I may update this little video here too, or when I get the plants planted up in there and in the bog area. Well, we have finally reached the end of this pond build and the end of this 3-part series, although I will be doing some updates in the future just kind of randomly. And obviously I am here in my studio, and as much as I would like to be outside filming this in front of the pond today, I just can't. There's a long list of reasons I'm not going to get into. But anyways, I have a list of things I want to go over here. basically to answer some questions I'm sure some of you might have. One of the things that's not on this list is the time frame that it took me to finish the pond. It's kind of hard to go over that. The time it took me to do it, and by that I mean start to finish, was 1 month and a couple of days. But as far as like the actual time, I never logged my hours. But what I can tell you is I basically worked on it every single day for an entire month, every feasible day, which was almost every day. So that included my entire days off, and from after breakfast maybe until I worked, and I worked until basically dark. Also after work, get home from work, work until it's dark. Basically, it was just a month straight of that. So that's about the time it took me to do it, and I did it 98% myself because I did have a little bit of help. I had to move the liner into place. It's a 140-pound liner. Moving that with just one person is a bit, it's a bit difficult. So I had a little bit of help moving that into place, and then I also had a little bit of help moving some stones. Although the amount of stones that was moved was only saved me maybe an hour worth of work. So other than that, it was all done myself. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I would say if you plan on building a pond, you might want to get some help. If you want to take it on yourself, there's a lot of work involved. Now, that aside, there was also planning involved, and that took me a couple of weeks to do that. This started out as an idea a year ago, and I thought about doing this, and I went through a couple different designs, the location, the size of the pond, all that changed several different times. And part of the reason, well, I'm not going to get into all the reasons. One of the reasons why I made the pond as small as I did was because every time you add another foot of diameter to the pond, you're significantly increasing the cost as far as stone goes and the size of the liner. The work involved isn't that much more if you increase it like another 2 feet in diameter, but you're actually increasing the materials that you need by quite a bit, and the cost go up. So that's one of the reasons why the pond is the size that it is. I would prefer it to actually be bigger. But getting back to the planning, it took me a few months to go over just a couple different ideas, and then a couple weeks of actual physical planning. And that involves doing a scaled sketch of it and going over all the dimensions, and then figuring out, based on that, what materials I need, where I need to get them from, and come up with an entire project plan, and then have those things delivered. So you're probably talking about actually 2 months worth of work, of solid 2 months worth of work, both with the planning and the physical stuff. That's with one person though. So if there's more people doing it, obviously it can be maybe a little bit quicker. So anyways, with all that aside, I wanted to talk about something I found, and I'll show a close-up of this in the video here too. So about 2 feet down underground, I found this guy here. And like I said, I'm going to show a close-up of this because obviously you're not going to see it too well from where the camera's sitting right now. But this is a Clovis preform, and I live in Northeast Ohio. So if you look up what Clovis is, you'll find what you need there. But this was 2 feet down in the ground. It was in undisturbed soil. This was outside of the area where the house was originally dug. And with the layers of soil that I saw there, it was completely undisturbed soil. So this has been there a long time. It is to me, it looks like a type of sedimentary rock. I wouldn't call it shale because it's not really like falling apart like shale. I'm not exactly sure what type of rock it is, but I can see the layers in it, and I can see that there's layers that were chipped apart from each other here. So it's not, with the type of rock that it is, I don't believe this is a spearhead, although you would commonly find this type of shape as a spearhead. This is quite big for a spearhead. I mean, if you're hunting a woolly mammoth, maybe this is probably not really that, this is probably the right size, is what I'm saying. But based on the type of rock that it is and how it was worked and the shape that it is, I don't believe this is a spearhead. I think it was more of a hand axe. And the reason why I say that also is because the way that it is shaped, on the top edge here is where I believe the thumb was put, because there is a spot up here where it looks like it's been worn. It's very smooth right here where it looks like something was placed. On the outside portions of that, It's not just where you would put your thumb here, or at least where I think you're supposed to put your thumb. And I believe it was held like this. Thumb went here, and then this indentation here on the side is where you had your other fingers. And it fits quite comfortably in the hand like this. Obviously, I would prefer it to be not a rock, but we're talking about something that was made in the Stone Age, the Ice Age, long time ago. And I believe it was a hand axe, and it was just used to hit things like this, to chip away wood or maybe other rocks. I'm not really sure exactly what it would have been used for, but generally speaking, a hand axe like this may be used for digging away soil or maybe just working some wood, but that's about it. I don't believe it was an actual spearhead, but that's what this is, and I thought it was quite cool. It was just kind of sticking. I saw just this top portion sticking out of the ground, and this wasn't really where I was digging. It was in a part where I was digging, but I was finished digging, and all I was doing is cleaning up the edges a little bit, and I just scraped the top edge of this here, and I noticed that I was only seeing like about that much. It was almost nothing sticking out of the ground, but I saw it was gray, and it was rounded a little bit, and I'm like, oh, that looks kind of different. That's weird. And then I just kind of scratched a little more of it away. I'm like, wait a second, that's not like a normal shape. I thought it was a piece of metal, actually, because of the color of it. But it was just sticking there and kind of sideways like this in the dirt, and then I just kind of pulled it out, and I'm like, oh, it was so dirty I couldn't really tell quite what it was. But I knew it looked like it was something man-made. And I had found in another area about a mile from here, I also did find a long time ago another spearhead made out of flint. This is not flint, but it was much smaller than that, and it was much more refined and worked and sharp. And it was where somebody had dug a house, and I found that. And I actually dated it back to to BC. It was very difficult to find the information for it, but I did find what I needed, and it was very old. Pretty cool to find. And this here too, this also means that there's probably more stuff like this around here on this property even. So that's pretty cool. I didn't talk about that or show this in any other part of this video series, and I may do some more research on that. And if anybody is watching this video who knows more about that stuff, please leave a comment, because I've done some research and I couldn't find too much information other than what I've kind of talked about here. Anyways, that aside, I'm going to get into talking about some more details about the pond. And as far as the fish goes, I talked about you already seen not too long ago in this video of what kind of fish I have in the pond. So right now I have just what they would call feeder goldfish, at least in this part of the country. They call them feeder goldfish, and they're actually called comet goldfish. So they don't get too incredibly big, but I have 9 of those in there. One of them died the day after I put them in. And then I have the rosy red minnows, and pretty much all the pet stores around here carry rosy red minnows, although I want to put other types of minnows in there as well, but that's all they had, and they're also a feeder fish. They're really cheap. The fish that I want to have in there is I want to put some weather loach in there, gudgeon, red shiners, which is a type of minnow, fathead minnow, and snails. Now, I haven't put those in there yet because, number one, I couldn't find any red shiners or fathead minnows around here. And if you go to shops for Lake Erie for bait, you can get emerald shiners. I don't really think it matters too much, but I chose these because I looked at a list of hardy fish that can survive winters and all that stuff without having to worry about feeding them, or feeding them very little anyways. And this is the list I came up with. Snails obviously are good for any pond, the cleanup crew. And then the reason why I didn't put the weather loach or the gudgeon in yet, although I can get those, the loaches will eat the snails and fish eggs, and I believe the same thing with the gudgeons. They will also eat fish eggs. I kind of want the pond to get established. I want some hiding places in there, and I don't have that yet because I don't have all the plants in there yet that I want to have. So I don't want to put any fish in there that's going to eat snails or fish eggs. So those are out right now. As far as the minnows go, the red shiners and the fathead minnows, I'm not really too concerned about those at the moment because I have minnows in there already, and I don't want to put too many fish in there right off the bat because the nitrogen cycle is still getting established. The pond itself, the whole ecosystem is still getting established. If you put too many fish in there at once, it's going to be a problem. So a little bit at a time. So that's what I'm planning to put in there as far as wildlife goes. And I also previously right before this part of this segment of the video, I mentioned I have tadpoles in there. I got 4 tadpoles, and I think they're just regular green frogs. I don't believe they're bullfrogs. They're definitely not leopard frogs. And by the way, leopard frogs, you can find them around here, but they're not really an aquatic frog. They call them semi-aquatic, so they're more of a land frog. They might live near water sources, but not really in it, kind of like other frogs do. Anyways, so that's as far as the livestock goes, that's pretty much it on the list. The plants now, I have some plants that I planted around the pond. I have nothing in the pond itself just yet. So currently I have the moss around there, which I mentioned before. I took off the roof of my shed, and I have plenty more of that if I want to put more moss around there. I have green velvet boxwoods, which you've seen in this video already, and then junipers, which is both of those plants, the boxwoods and the junipers, are evergreens. And the reason why I wanted those around the pond is I wanted something that would be green all year round, basically. I didn't want to have just perennials that came back in the spring. I wanted to have something that kind of stayed there, just to make it more appealing, at least during the winter months. What I'm planning on putting in there in the pond itself, as far as like, they're basically bog plants or marginal plants, and they're on the way. I have them on order. I just don't have them yet, and they're not in there yet. And in the future, you'll probably see them in an updated video. But blue irises, and those only get to 1 to 2 feet tall. I didn't want any plants that were too tall because I want it to be visible from all sides. But if you have a tall plant from one side of the yard, if you're viewing it from one side of the yard, I don't want to block the view of the entire thing, the entire pond, or a feature of it anyways. So I wanted plants that weren't too tall. And according to what I've never grown blue irises before. I think I've seen them. It is what they say. It's between 1 and 2 feet. I thought about yellow irises, but those can get 3 feet tall. And if you plant those in a certain position, it could block the view from a certain angle. So I was trying to avoid that. Also, dwarf sweet flag, and again, those are 1 to 2 feet tall. It's kind of like a ornamental grass, sort of. So those will also be planted in part of the pond and part of the bog area. So it's kind of important to have plants in the water, marginal plants, to absorb nutrients out of the water. It's part of the whole ecosystem. Very important. So those are the plants that are going to go in there. And I may add some other stuff in the future, but as far as what's around the pond and going to be in the pond, that's pretty much it on the list there. So now I'm going to go over the cost and material of the pond, and it's not that long of a list. So the first thing here on the list is the pump. I just got a cheap pump off of Amazon. And again, all of these materials will be listed in the video description below. If you're interested in any of these things, some of those are going to be associate links. And I've said before, it doesn't cost you anything if you click on the links. I just make a tiny bit of commission if you click on them. So anyways, there was the pump. It was $62 off Amazon. I think that price is because I had a discount. The piping, the flex PVC that you saw that I buried, that's 1.25 inch PVC. Flex PVC, and it was $100, and I got that off of Amazon. The liner, there was no liners of the size that I needed on Amazon, so I got this from justpondliners.com. That was $850 for the pond liner. Now that's actually, that's not just a liner, that's the underlayment as well. So the cloth material, they call it a non-woven synthetic material, so it doesn't rot. That I got an underlayment and an overlayment. So basically 2 sheets of the same size. It was 20 by 25 feet, both the sheets. So as far as the liner and underlayment together, that is the cost, $850 for all 3 of those things. And the plumbing parts didn't cost that much. It was about $25 I got from various hardware stores. It's just very common hardware parts that you can find anywhere, basically. The gravel that I got 34R, they call it river rock or wash gravel, and I got 2 tons of that. And the boulders that you saw, the crushed boulders, which were the larger gravel, I guess if you want to call it that, that was 2 tons as well. And together with the delivery fee, that was $285, and I got that delivered from Royalton Supply. So 4 tons worth of material basically, and I had to move that twice. well, more than twice. I also washed it as well before I put it in the pond because I didn't want the pond getting full of muck, which worked out pretty well actually. And then the boulders, the large rock that I got was 5.1 tons of boulders. And I did the same thing with that. I had to manually move those more than twice and wash them as well. Although those weren't quite as dirty as all the gravel was. And the cost of that was $1,134, and that was from AAA Landscaping. That's a local place. That's actually a really decent price because all the other places around here that I look for boulders anyways, was 2 or 3 times that price just for boulders. And when you think of 5 tons of boulders, you think it's like a lot. It's actually not. As you saw in the video, if you watched this whole video series, there's an image there of what that pile looks like. Yes, if you're manually moving it, it looks like a lot to move. But as far as the actual size of the pile of rocks, it's really not that big. The rocks weigh a lot, especially granite. I wanted to use sandstone, but the problem with sandstone in a pond is if it absorbs water, which it will, and then it freezes in winter, it could fall apart. Now, if you're stacking rocks in water and you're using those to support other rocks and they crack and fall apart and break, and you have a collapse, well, you just made a ton of work for yourself. So I didn't want to use sandstone, although I would have liked to. And there's not a whole lot of other types of rocks around here locally that I can get that are more angular and things like that. I would have preferred that. So I had to go with granite. That was pretty much the best option. And that's really the two main things that cost the most with a pond project, a decorative or garden pond, if you want to call it that, is going to be the liner and the rock. Those are the two main costs. If you can eliminate the rock and just say put flagstone around the edge and use a bigger liner, you can save a ton of money and a ton of work. Like you can save a ton of work by not going with boulders. But that's what I did. That's the kind of person I am. I like to do things. I don't want to have to go back and say, I wish I did it this way. I just said, let's just get it done the right way the first time. So anyways, the next things, I just bought some buckets from Lowe's. Those were, the buckets were just, how much they cost? They were $12. So like $6 a piece with a lid. And those were just used to make the bog clean out. And next thing here on the list was the pond stone foam. I got 3 cans of that, and it was $10 a piece. So it was for $30, and I got that from Menards. That was the cheapest place I could find. I didn't use a lot of the foam. I mean, I used pretty much all the 3 cans, but when you're doing a project with stone for ponds, it's easy to use a ton more than that. I only use it for certain things. Part of the waterfall, which actually didn't use that much, and other parts of the stacking where I wanted to have the most stability that I can get. So anything that was supporting a bunch of other rocks on top of it or around the edges where people might step on them, I wanted the extra support. Although they were locked together pretty well, I just wanted the extra insurance policy, I guess. I also got some pea gravel, and that was 100 pounds of pea gravel and 240 pounds of sand. I only used about half of that sand. Altogether, the pea gravel and the sand cost $35 from Home Depot. And the pea gravel, I only actually used 1 bag of that instead of, it was 2 bags. I only used 1 bag. And that was just to go behind the liner up against the edge of the patio because I didn't want the dirt and rock to erode away against the liner from out underneath the patio since it's right up against it. I didn't want to weaken the structure there. So I wanted to make sure I tucked in a bunch of pea gravel in between the liner to kind of fill in any kind of void behind there and to allow water to flow around it as well, at least just a trickle of water that went around towards the French drain. So that was the point of that. Altogether, the plants right now cost me $52, and that's not including the iris and the dwarf sweet flag. I believe that was $70, but I don't have those yet. So right now I've only spent really $52. That's actually not accurate. I spent more than that if you include the other plants. Anyways, I'll do the math for you in a little bit here. I put the lights around the pond. Those are 12-volt lights, 12-volt LED lights. I don't like solar lights. They don't last. I wanted something that would just be permanent and not really have to worry too much about it. Also, with the lights being 12 volt, it was very easy to put a dimmer in place and a photocell and to kind of manipulate the way that I wanted to. And if I want to add more of those later on, I just add more to the existing line that's there and just basically splice it in. Very easy to do. Although I think 3 lights that I have there is plenty. So those cost me $84, and I believe I got those from Lowe's. And I got some dirt and mulch. Actually, that's actually both. The type of mulch, the type of dirt that I got had mulch mixed into it. It was like a manure mulch mix. And then I got a couple bags of actual mulch, and that was $30 worth of stuff. That was just to go around the back side of the bog area where there's going to be some ground cover plants. The fish and the aquatic life so far, as I've mentioned, what you've seen in the pond already, is only $18. So the most expensive thing was actually the tadpoles. The 4 tadpoles cost me $10 in total, which I think is ridiculous. You can go and find tadpoles in a lot of places, in parks and stuff, if you look for them. But I don't know, $10 is a fair price to pay to save me the time. Okay, so that is all the cost and material. That is everything, and there is nothing else. Like this is everything right here. And just to save you from doing the math, I'll just put the price up on the video here of the total cost of the pond, not including my time. Although I do value my time, I'm not going to include that. But just as far as the rough material, the hard materials go, that's what it cost. Now I'm going to get into before I close out this video here. I know it's long already. There's one thing that I never even thought about when I built this pond and when I was planning it. All this time, I never, ever thought about it, and I really wish I would have, because now I'm going to have to do something else in the future to make things easier for myself. And there's a couple things that go along with this as well that's important to talk about for those who are planning on maybe putting in some kind of a pond. Now, I'm calling this the Proposed Water Replenishment Plan, and I just can't, I can't believe I never thought about this. And that's the evaporation rate. Now, when I first put the pond in, when I was building it anyways, and it filled up the water, I was watching the water level go down, and I was really concerned that I had a leak in the liner, because at that point, with everything, all the gravel and rocks in place, it's going to be impossible to find a leak, even if it's a small pinhole type leak. And I was looking at it, and then when the pond was finally finished, and everything was not being changed anymore, and it was filled with water, and the days got a little bit warmer, I noticed that the water level kept dropping slowly, and I was still worried about that I was having a leak. And I know that water evaporates, and I know that's obviously, I'd be stupid not to know that, but I didn't know how fast it would actually evaporate, especially with that volume of water. Now, it was around 70 degrees, and over a 24-hour period, I watched the water level go down about a 1/4 inch in 24 hours. And to me, it felt like that was too much. So I had to calculate the surface area of the pond, the surface area of the water itself. That includes the bog area. And I had to look up what the evaporation rate would be by volume to figure out how much that was. So I calculated what it was, and it was around somewhere between 8 and 10 gallons of water. And then I took a bucket with a measured amount of water. I had 4 gallons of it, and I poured in 8 gallons of water, and it brought that water level up to exactly where it was 24 hours prior to that. So I had lost 8 gallons over a period of 24 hours. It seemed like a lot to me. But one thing that I never actually knew about, because I've never had a pool, but if you have a pool, and I'm sure some pool owners already know this, but if you take a bucket, they call it the bucket test, you put whether it be a 5-gallon bucket or whatever, you put a measured amount of water in there and mark where the water level is, and then do the same thing in your pool, and you set it right out there outside, and then you come back the next day or days later and see where it dropped down to. If the water in the bucket has dropped down an inch and the pool dropped down an inch, well, that evaporation rate is identical, and it means you don't have a leak, or at least not a major leak. So it actually, it doesn't even matter. So even if I do have a leak in my pond or a pinhole leak or anything like that, it doesn't even compare to how much water actually evaporates from the pond. And it seemed like a lot to me, going back to what I was just talking about before. The bigger the pond is, the bigger the surface area, the more volume of water evaporates over the same period of time. But the level of water drops the same. So whether it's a little puddle this big or a pond that's an acre, the water level will drop down the same. If it's a quarter inch, it's a quarter inch. The only thing that's different is the volume, and that's based off of surface area. Now, the reason why I'm saying that is, one is because I felt kind of stupid. The other reason is because the volume of water is also kind of what's important. So if I had a hole that I dug straight down 10 feet and I put the water in that hole, well, now there's going to be, let's just say there's 200 gallons of water in that hole. If I dug the same size diameter hole and then made it half that, so there'd be only 100 gallons, well, you're still going to lose the same amount of water in that hole per day, but the overall volume is much larger if you had a deeper hole. But talking about evaporation rate and everything. So the plan here, I come up with 3 different things. My original plan with the pond actually was to have an auto fill, an auto top off thing, a float valve. And I didn't put it in because I figured I'd just add that on later. But I didn't realize how important it would actually be because I didn't realize how often you'd actually have to add water. So I didn't put that in, but that's part of this plan again. And my first plan was, or not my first plan, but first on this list, is in no particular order, was drilling a well. Now around here, if I drill down at 25 to 30 feet, I'll hit water. And if I wanted to put a shallow well like that in, I could use the well to top off what I would lose in a day. It'd be very easy to put in 8 to 10 gallons of water in the pond a day from a well because a lot of wells are going to have gallons per minute. And this, I'm only talking about over a period of 24 hours using that much. So that wouldn't be an issue. So a well would be a feasible plan. The other option would be to collect rainwater, whether it be a rain barrel or a tote, a large tote. So if I used a 50-gallon drum, that's only going to give me a couple days worth of top-offs, and that's if it rained and it was actually full. So I could use 2 rain barrels, but then the more rain barrels that you actually use, well, now you're looking at the aesthetics. So I don't want to have a ton of rain barrels all along the back of my house just for a pond top-off. Although, on the other hand, if they were above ground, all you have to do is tie a line to the bottom of the barrel and put it into the pond with a float valve. There's no electricity needed. It'll just come out of the barrels based, on gravity. Gravity will take care of it without anything else. No timers, no nothing. Just a float valve that fills it up and then it stops by itself. So that was one option. And the other option that includes a rain barrel that is protected from the elements. And by that I mean like from sun and heat and stuff like that, is to basically put it in the ground. Have a reservoir underneath the ground where it catches the rainwater, and that keeps it at temperature where it's not getting hot. It's keeping it below ambient temperature in the ground. And it's out of any kind of sunlight as well. So if I was using a barrel where sunlight could actually get into it, that would take care of that. Although you can cover barrels, so it's not really a problem. So if I put rain barrels in the ground, that would be another option, but then you would need something to pump it out. So you needed another electronic item to be able to pump the water out, and then also a float valve at the same time. Or instead of using rain barrels, just digging a reservoir with a line or all that stuff. That's basically like digging another pond, which it would need to be a significant size hole to do that. Another project, basically. The other option was using my whole house filtration system and then tying that into the pond with the float valve. That was my original plan. And the reason why I'm kind of leaning away from that is because, well, if I'm putting 8 to 10 gallons a day, that's a lot of water, and I can, drive up the water bill. And although it is filtered water, both chlorines and chloramines, because I do have chloramines in my water, the the filter doesn't really take, I don't believe it takes out 100% of the chloramines. And chloramines take around a month to really dissipate. Chlorine basically just takes like a day or so to come out of the water, so that's not really an issue. Chloramines take a lot longer to come out of the water. And I believe it also turns into ammonia if it comes to a filter, which then you're adding ammonia to the water. So, I mean, as far as for like human consumption, it's not really a problem. But as far as putting it in a pond goes, then you don't want to keep adding stuff to it and then building up those things in the pond. And by that, I mean like chemicals like that or total dissolved solids, so TDS. The TDS of the water will go up. So when the water evaporates, it's only evaporating water. It's not evaporating the total dissolved solids in the water. So your minerals and everything start to increase. So if the water was to evaporate over a period of a day or two, and I put my TDS meter in the water, you'll already see there's an increase of total dissolved solids because of concentration, which is another way you can see if you have a leak. If your TDS stays the same and the water level goes down, well, then you have a leak. If it goes up, and if the TDS goes up over a period of a couple days, well, then you know it's from evaporation. So collecting rainwater, where it's pure water basically, is a lot better of an option to replenish the pond. Obviously, when it rains, it's going to fill the pond up itself, but collecting water on the side of that as well to store that extra water and refill it as you need is a better thing to do, because it's pure water. You're not adding any more total dissolved solids to it. It's the same thing with keeping a fish tank. You know, if you're continuously topping off your fish tank with tap water that has minerals in it and stuff, you're slowly increasing the amount of total dissolved solids in the water. And then, although some fish can get used to it, some fish can't. It's actually creating a kind of a more harsh environment. Your water becomes liquid rock, basically. So it's kind of a difficult thing to think about. I mean, I'm leaning more towards collecting rainwater just because I'd rather top it off with pure water rather than continuously increasing the TDS of the pond water. On top of that, when you keep doing that, you're also you're giving algae food to eat, especially when you're talking about silica in the water. I think phosphates as well, stuff like that. All this stuff you can find in tap water from city water, and that will just increase the amount of stuff that algae likes to eat and cause algae to grow. So I'm leaning more towards collecting rainwater than anything else. Now, a well, I don't know if I was to dig down. If I was to make a well, I don't know what the groundwater would actually be like. There's obviously going to be some amount of minerals in that water and obviously other things. So I'm a little bit concerned about if I drill a well and then find the water is unusable, well, I just wasted a bunch of time and money to do it. So I haven't exactly decided, is what I'm saying. I haven't exactly decided what I'm going to do as far as the water replenishment plan. Although as of right now, topping it off with some tap water here and there or filtered tap water isn't really a big deal. But long term, I prefer a different option. So anyways, this video is already very, very long. There was a lot of stuff I wanted to cover because not just showing the build of the project, more just trying to provide some information for people to kind of see what they're going to get into if they're planning on doing this. I've never done it before. And it's kind of a learning process. So as far as like the weather around here goes, Northeast Ohio, we can have pretty cold winters. It's common to get 12 to 18 inches of ice on a volume of water. If it's a small volume of water, the ice can go even deeper. So when I dug the pond, it goes 3 feet deep from the patio edge to the bottom, but there's at least I think there's about 6 inches worth of rock and gravel on the bottom. So I lost about, so it's actually about 2.5 feet deep, which is still enough, but it's only a small area. So I'll be putting an aerator down there in the middle of the pond during the winter so that it stops it from freezing. The ground will help keep the water from freezing because the ground itself retains a certain temperature, helps it to regulate. If it was too shallow, it would freeze and basically the fish would die unless you took them out. I don't want to do all that. I want to try to keep it simple after this. I don't want to add more work for myself. I want to try to keep everything as simple as possible. So anyways, I think that about covers everything that I wanted to cover. One more thing though, if you have any questions here about anything, or maybe something I didn't cover, you can go ahead and leave them in the comments. I will probably make an update in the future answering all of those questions. I probably won't be answering a bunch of questions in the comments if I get a lot of them. I'll take the questions that I find that are probably most common or that are more important, and I'll be answering those questions in a separate video. But if you have any questions about anything and you haven't watched this whole video series, go back and watch all 3 parts of these videos here, because I've covered a bunch of different things through some interjections between the time lapses and everything. And if you skip through the videos, you might have missed those small details. So anyways, thanks for watching if you made it to this point. I know it was a long video, and maybe we'll see you again in another pond video. Thanks for watching.